All right, let's put you in a hot seat. Imagine you're in a boardroom of an IPL franchise, and you've got to make a multi-million-dollar call on a 19-year-old kid. This is, without a doubt, the single biggest gamble in modern cricket. And today, we're going to break down exactly how these high-stakes bets are really made.
I mean, the scale of the money has just completely changed this game. You know, when a legend like Rohit Sharma admits his first big paycheck was so shocking he literally had to count the zeros, it really puts things into perspective. Now we're handing 19-year-olds contracts worth 14 crore. That's created a gold rush for young talent, and for us owners, a whole new set of very complex problems.
So, to make the right call, we've got a pretty clear 5-step briefing. First, we'll get real about the new financial landscape of the league. Then, we'll break down the gamble we owners are taking. After that, we'll get into the strategies that build a winning franchise, decode the mindset of a modern star, and finally, lock in the blueprint for the perfect superstar investment.
Yeah, this has moved way beyond just runs and wickets. Our real challenge now is managing sudden, life-altering wealth and the ambition that comes right along with it.
Just let that number sink in for a second. One good season and a 19-year-old is staring down a guaranteed 42 crore contract. That's nearly $5 million by the time they're 22. For players from humble backgrounds, guys like Rinku Singh, whose father delivered gas cylinders, this financial security is just phenomenal. It's an incredible positive force that removes that daily struggle for their family, and that's a massive win.
But here's the flip side, and this is the question that honestly keeps us up at night. This kind of money creates a new reality. A player's life is financially sorted. That fear of failure, the thing that used to drive players, that fear that if they didn't perform, they were finished, it's kind of gone. So what's going to drive them to keep pushing the limits when they've already won the lottery?
And that right there, that brings us to the central dilemma we face at every single auction. It's a high-wire act, right? Balancing this generational talent against an immense psychological risk.
So I'll ask you, would you do it? Would you bet millions on a teenager? This is the question we constantly have to answer. You see a player with unbelievable potential, someone who could define your franchise for a decade. But we all know the history of sports is just littered with prodigies who couldn't handle the pressure.
Now this is fascinating. These aren't just generic worries. These are the exact same words from two different franchise owners talking about the same young player. That tells you this isn't some isolated fear. It's a recognized, league-wide pattern. This is the risk that gets talked about in every single boardroom.
And we've got the receipts to back that concern up. We've seen this perilous path play out before. A young player just dominates. The world is at their feet, and then the noise. The endorsements, the fame, the lifestyle, it drowns out the one thing that got them there, the hard work with bat and ball. Prithvi Shaw is a classic example of a player who just seemed to vanish under the weight of it all before having to fight his way back.
So how do we protect these multi-million-dollar investments? How do we de-risk the prodigy? Well, it's not luck. It's about engineering success, building the right structure and, crucially, the right leadership around them.
And what Rajasthan Royals did with their captaincy choice recently is a perfect illustration of this strategy in action. Look, they had a choice. On one hand, you've got Yashasvi Jaiswal, a superstar in the making who wanted the job. But they didn't just pick the bigger name. They ran a process and chose Riyan Parag. Why? Because his domestic captaincy experience proves he can handle pressure and manage a team when the IPL cameras aren't rolling. That is an informed, strategic choice.
Okay, now switch gears and look at Chennai Super Kings and their succession planning. Their move for Sanju Samson is a masterclass. This wasn't some snap decision. He was a long-term target to eventually succeed the legend MS Dhoni. The key thing here is that the move nails two goals at once. They get an elite, experienced leader for maybe the next decade. And, just as important, they onboard his massive dedicated fan base. That secures the team on the field and boosts the franchise's value off of it.
But look, a strong leadership structure, that's only half the battle. The player themselves has to have the right mindset, because the very DNA of modern T20 cricket has completely evolved.
Pay close attention here, because this is fundamental to our whole investment philosophy. The old T20 mindset, it's dead. Playing for personal milestones, like we saw with Saibzada Farhan taking 7 balls for his last 10 runs just to get a century, that actually hurts the team. In a game of 120 balls, that kills your momentum and lowers the team's potential score. The modern winning mindset is selfless. It is all about impact, not individual numbers.
So how do you get this modern mindset into their heads? Well, mentorship it's non-negotiable. It's a key part of our risk mitigation strategy. You can't just leave these young players on an island. Bringing in veterans like Yuvraj Singh to personally groom players like Shubman Gill and Abhishek Sharma is invaluable. They don't just teach technique, they shape the mental approach you need to succeed at the highest level.
All right, so we've analyzed the risks, we've looked at the strategies to deal with them. What does the ideal investment actually look like? What's the blueprint for the young player we are willing to bet the entire franchise on?
It's not just one thing. It's a combination of three distinct, yet equally critical characteristics that we are actively scouting for, all the time.
First, the talent has to be immense and fearless. That's the ticket to the dance. Second, they must have an insatiable hunger for runs, a drive so deep that a 42 crore contract can't even touch it. And finally, and this is probably the most important piece, they need to have deep-seated humility and character to handle the storm of fame and wealth that's about to hit them. And a player like Vaibhav Suryavanshi, he is the embodiment of this blueprint. The talent is explosive, we know that, but it's the off-field stories that really get our attention. Anecdotes of him touching MS Dhoni's feet out of pure respect, or this quote where he genuinely asks his coach if he did something special because he just can't comprehend the hype. That shows us the character. That shows us an investment that's built to last.
So that's the briefing, and it leaves us with one final critical question to chew on. In a league defined by explosive hitting and dizzying strike rates, is it possible that the single most valuable asset we can invest in is the one that never even shows up on a stat sheet?